Kate Morrison stood in the center of the great hall and felt her hands shake with anger. Around her sat the representatives of 247 different alien species, all looking down at her from their elevated seats. The Galactic Council chamber was built to make humans feel small, and it worked. But today Kate did not care about feeling small. Today she was done with all of this. The vote had just finished. Once again, the Council had rejected Earth's proposal. This time, it was about helping refugees from the war zones in the Outer Rim. Millions of beings were dying, and Earth wanted to send aid. The Council said no. They always said no when humans suggested anything. The human proposal lacks merit, said Councillor Vexthara from his crystal throne. The tall blue alien looked down at Kate with 4 yellow eyes that showed nothing but contempt. These refugees are not our concern. Each species must handle its own problems. Kate had heard these words too many times. For 30 years, she had served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. For 30 years, she had watched her people be treated like children. Humans were the newest members of the galactic community. They had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. To the ancient alien civilizations, this made humans babies who knew nothing. But Kate knew the truth. In the 5 decades since first contact, humans had solved more galactic problems than any other species. Human engineers fixed broken space stations that alien experts said could not be repaired. Human doctors found cures for plagues that had killed aliens for centuries. Human negotiators ended wars that had raged for thousands of years. Yet still the Council treated Earth like a junior partner who should be grateful just to have a seat. At the table, Commander Jake Collins stood behind Kate in his crisp military uniform. His jaw was tight with controlled rage. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Hayes clutched her datapad with white knuckles. Both had watched the vote with growing disbelief. The evidence was clear. The refugee crisis would spread if nothing was done. Entire star systems would fall into chaos. But the Council preferred to ignore problems until they became catastrophes. Ambassador Morrison called another alien voice. This one belonged to Councillor Zephyr, a gaseous being that spoke through electronic translators. Perhaps Earth should focus on its own development before trying to solve the galaxy's problems. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not kind laughter, but the cruel sound that powerful beings make when they mock those they see as weak. Kate felt something break inside her chest. It was not her heart. It was her faith in this broken system. She had tried everything. Careful diplomacy, passionate speeches, cold logic backed by hard data, political alliances with friendlier species. Nothing worked. The older races saw humans as upstart newcomers who needed to learn their place. That place was apparently at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. Grateful for scraps of respect, Kate thought about the message she had received that morning from Earth. President Baker had given her full authority to make whatever decision she felt was best. The president trusted Kate's judgment after 3 decades of faithful service. Kate had not expected to use that authority today. She had hoped for one more chance to make the system work. But the system was not broken. It was working exactly as designed. It was designed to keep humans down. Councillor Vexthara, Kate said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. You speak of merit. Let me tell you about merit. The alien leaned forward with what might have been amusement. Please enlighten us with human wisdom. Kate smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. In the past 5 years, Earth has mediated 17 border disputes. We have provided disaster relief to 43 worlds. Our medical teams have saved over 2 billion alien lives from disease and injury. Our engineers maintain the hyperspace relay network that keeps your precious communication systems working. Our peacekeeping forces guard trade routes that generate trillions of credits in commerce. She paused and looked around the chamber. Some aliens were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Others maintained their arrogant poses, but Kate could see uncertainty in their expressions. Meanwhile, Kate continued, this council has passed exactly 3 meaningful resolutions in those same 5 years. 3. The rest of your time has been spent arguing about ceremonial procedures and trade regulations that benefit only the wealthiest species. Vexthara's yellow eyes narrowed. Your point, human? My point is that Earth has been carrying this council for decades while you treat us like servants. We solve your problems. We keep your peace. We maintain your infrastructure. And in return, you vote down every proposal we make and tell us to know our place. The chamber had gone quiet. Even the translator systems seemed to hum more softly. Kate felt Jake and Lisa step closer behind her, showing their support. The refugee crisis will spread, Kate said, her voice growing stronger. When it does, you will expect human aid workers to clean up the mess. You will expect human peacekeepers to restore order. You will expect human engineers to rebuild what was destroyed. But you will not give us the authority to prevent the crisis. In the first place, that is the natural order, Vexthara replied coldly. Older civilizations guide policy. Younger ones follow instructions. Kate nodded slowly. I see. And how old is your civilization, Counselor? The Zephyrian Empire has existed for 12,000 years. 12,000 years, Kate repeated. 12,000 years of existence. And what do you have to show for it? Your people live in the same cities your ancestors built. You use the same technologies they invented. You follow the same customs they established. In 12,000 years, you have created nothing new. Angry sounds erupted from the Zephyrian delegation, but Kate was not finished. Humanity has existed in space for 50 years. In that time, we have developed 17 new forms of faster than light travel. We have invented medical techniques that extend life for dozens of species. We have created art and music that beings across the galaxy enjoy. We have built cities on worlds you said were uninhabitable. We have made peace between enemies you said would fight forever. Kate turned in a slow circle, making eye contact with representatives throughout the chamber. You call us young and inexperienced, but youth brings new ideas. Experience without growth is just another word for stagnation. How dare you? Vexthara hissed, rising from his throne. You speak of things you do not understand. I understand. Perfectly, Kate replied. I understand that this council exists to preserve the power of old empires who fear change. I understand that you need humanity more than we need you. And I understand that we have been wasting our time trying to work within a system designed to keep us powerless. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. With a press of her thumb, it activated, sending a coded signal to every human installation in the galaxy. What is that? Demanded another alien counselor. Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, Kate said calmly. Any member species may withdraw from the Council with proper notification. I am hereby formally notifying this assembly that Earth is withdrawing from all galactic treaties, agreements, and obligations effective immediately. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages. Some were standing and waving appendages angrily. Others were frantically working their communication devices. Through it all, Kate stood calmly in the center of the storm. Jake leaned close to her ear. All human stations have confirmed receipt of the withdrawal order. Evacuation protocols are beginning. Kate nodded. Across the galaxy, human diplomats were packing their bags. Human peacekeepers were returning to their ships. Human engineers were shutting down their projects and heading home. Human aid workers were closing their clinics and loading their supplies. In a matter of hours, the galactic community would discover just how much they depended on the species they had taken for granted. You cannot do this, Vexthara was shouting over the noise. "The galaxy needs stability." Kate looked up at him with cold eyes. "Then you should have thought of that before you decided humanity was not worth listening to." She turned and walked toward the exit with Jake and Lisa beside her. Behind them, the council chamber descended into panic as the reality of Earth's withdrawal began to sink in. Some aliens were already trying to calculate the economic impact. Others were wondering who would mediate their ongoing conflicts. A few were starting to realize that their own worlds depended on human-built technology that might soon stop working. Kate did not look back. She had given the galaxy 30 years of her life trying to make the system work. Now it was time to let them see what the galaxy looked like without human involvement. She suspected they would not like what they discovered. Captain Ryan Mitchell watched the massive cargo doors of Station Kepler 7 slam shut in front of his ship. The New Horizons had been making this supply run for 8 years, but today the station manager would not even answer his calls. Through the view screen, Ryan could see other alien cargo ships floating helplessly outside the closed docking bays. "Sir," called his communications officer, "I am getting automated messages from all human facilities. They say all commercial operations are suspended indefinitely." Ryan rubbed his tired eyes. The withdrawal order had come 12 hours ago, and already the effects were spreading across the galaxy like a plague. His ship carried medical supplies desperately needed on Altair Prime, where a bacterial outbreak was killing thousands. But the supplies had been manufactured on Earth, and now Earth was not talking to anyone. 3 seats behind him sat Merchant Prince Kethmal, a wealthy vegan trader who had paid premium rates for passage on this run. The purple-skinned alien was frantically working his communication device, trying to reach his business contacts. "This is madness," Kethmal said, his voice high with panic. "My entire trade network depends on human manufacturing. I have orders worth 50 million credits that cannot be filled." Ryan had no sympathy for the alien. He had heard Kethmal mock humans many times during previous voyages. The merchant thought humans were useful servants, but not worthy of respect. Now those useful servants had gone home and taken their services with them. "Captain Mitchell," came another voice over the com system. This one belonged to Dr. Amy Parker, calling from her research station orbiting a distant star. "I am pulling my team out of the Joint Xenobiology Project. We are taking all our data and equipment back to Earth." Ryan was not surprised. Dr. Parker had been studying alien diseases for 15 years, developing treatments that saved millions of lives across the galaxy. But her alien colleagues treated her like a junior researcher despite her obvious expertise. They published papers using her discoveries without giving her credit. They excluded her from important conferences. They made jokes about human intelligence. When they thought she could not hear Dot, the comm channel crackled with static as more human facilities reported their shutdown status. Mining operations on asteroid belts, agricultural research stations, deep space monitoring posts, trading hubs, diplomatic compounds, manufacturing centers. They were all going dark one by one. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Jack Warren was coordinating the largest military withdrawal in galactic history. Hundreds of human ships were abandoning their patrol routes and heading home. For decades, human peacekeepers had maintained order in the most dangerous regions of space. They hunted pirates. They protected trade convoys. They responded to distress calls from ships of every species. Now those ships were on their own. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "the Centauri Alliance is demanding to know why we are abandoning the neutral zone. They say the Altarians might attack without our patrols to keep the peace." Warren almost smiled. The Centaurians and Altarians had been enemies for 3,000 years. Human diplomats had negotiated a fragile ceasefire between them, but it required constant monitoring. To prevent incidents, both species claimed to be brave warriors, but neither wanted to patrol the border themselves. They were happy to let humans do the dangerous work while they stayed safely behind their defensive lines. "Tell them to figure it out themselves," Warren sighed. "We are no longer responsible for their problems." Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the first economic shockwaves were hitting major trading centers. The Galactic Stock Exchange was in freefall as investors realized how many industries depended on human involvement. Transportation companies found themselves without the human-designed navigation systems that made faster-than-light travel safe. Energy corporations discovered that their fusion reactors required human-made components that could not be easily replaced. Medical facilities ran out of drugs that only human chemists knew how to manufacture. Kefmal was not the only trader. Facing ruin. Across dozens of worlds, alien merchants were discovering that their supply chains had massive holes. Earth produced over 40% of the galaxy's manufactured goods, but most aliens had never thought about where their products came from. They just assumed someone would always make the things they needed. The Zephyrian homeworld was experiencing its first power shortages in centuries. Their orbital stations ran on fusion reactors built by human engineers 20 years ago. The reactors were incredibly reliable, but they needed regular maintenance using procedures that only humans understood. Zephyrian technicians had tried to learn the maintenance routines, but the technology was too advanced for their stagnant civilization to master. Counselor Vexthara stood in his private chambers, watching the lights flicker as another power grid failed. His 4 yellow eyes were wide with growing panic. He had always assumed that aliens could do anything humans could do. Now he was learning that assumption was wrong. Emergency messages were flooding into the council chambers from across the galaxy. The Rigelian Confederation reported that their communication network was failing without human technicians to maintain the quantum relays. The Andromedan Trade Union announced that their shipping industry was paralyzed because human pilots had abandoned their posts. The Vegan Republic warned that their agricultural worlds faced famine because human-developed crop treatments were no longer available. But the worst news came from the Outer Rim, where the refugee crisis was spreading exactly as Dr. Hayes had predicted. Without human peacekeepers to maintain order, several conflicts were escalating into full-scale wars. Pirates were raiding supply convoys with impunity. Desperate populations were fleeing their homes and overwhelming neighboring systems. Ancient Altarian and Centauri civilizations were mobilizing their fleets as border incidents multiplied. Each side blamed the other for violating the ceasefire. Without human mediators to investigate the incidents and calm tensions, both empires were preparing for a war that could devastate entire sectors. Earth President Susan Baker sat in the Oval Office, reading reports from around the galaxy. Each message painted the same picture. Alien civilizations were discovering that they had become completely dependent on human expertise without realizing it. What they had seen as human eagerness to help had actually been humans taking responsibility for maintaining galactic civilization. "Madam President," said her chief of staff, "we are receiving thousands of requests for emergency assistance. Several alien governments are offering significant payments for our services." President Baker shook her head. "No exceptions. We tried to work within their system for 50 years. They made it clear that humans are not welcome as equals. So we are leaving them to handle their own affairs." The decision was painful but necessary. Earth had spent enormous resources helping aliens who showed no gratitude. Human lives had been lost protecting alien worlds. Human scientists had shared their discoveries freely, while alien researchers hoarded their knowledge. Human diplomats had solved conflicts between species that had been fighting since before humans discovered fire. And in return, aliens treated humanity like naive children who should be grateful for any scraps of respect. Back on station, Kepler 7, the situation was becoming desperate. The station manager finally opened a communication channel to the waiting cargo ships, but his message was not what they wanted to hear. All human personnel had departed, announced the artificial intelligence that ran the station's systems. Automated systems will maintain basic life support for 72 hours. After that, all non-essential functions will shut down to preserve power. Ryan Mitchell realized that the alien crews on those other cargo ships might be trapped. The station's docking systems were human-designed, and most aliens did not understand how to operate them manually. Without human technicians to help, the ships might not be able to dock, even in an emergency dock. It was not his problem anymore. The New Horizons was equipped with human technology, and Ryan's crew knew how to handle any situation. But he found himself thinking about the alien crews who might die because their own species had never bothered to learn how their technology actually worked. Kethmo appeared at his elbow, his purple skin pale with fear. "Captain Mitchell, surely we can make some arrangement. I can pay you 10 times the normal rate." "For what?" Ryan asked. "To complete this delivery run. My people on Altair Prime will die without those medical supplies." Ryan considered the request. The supplies were desperately needed, and he could easily complete the delivery. But doing so would undermine Earth's withdrawal. If humans kept solving alien problems, then aliens would never learn to solve problems themselves. "I am sorry," Ryan said finally, "but those supplies belong to Earth now. If Altair Prime needs medicine, then they should develop their own pharmaceutical industry." Kethmal stared at him in shock. "But we do not know how to make these drugs." "Then maybe you should have learned instead of assuming humans would always do it for you." The merchant stumbled backward as the truth hit him. His species had become so dependent on human manufacturing that they could not survive without it. Across the galaxy, millions of beings were making the same terrible discovery. The first shots of the Altarian-Centauri War were fired at exactly 14 hours after Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council. A Centauri patrol ship detected what appeared to be an Altarian invasion fleet crossing the neutral zone. The patrol ship opened fire without attempting to communicate. Within minutes, both sides were scrambling their battle fleets for what would become the largest interstellar war in 3 centuries. General Claire Adams watched the battle reports from her command center on Luna Base. She had predicted this conflict would begin within 24 hours of the human withdrawal. The Altarians and Centaurians had been spoiling for a fight for decades, but human peacekeepers had always managed to prevent serious incidents. Now there were no human ships patrolling the border, and no human diplomats to calm tensions when misunderstandings occurred. "General," reported her intelligence officer, "both sides are requesting immediate human military assistance. They are offering to pay us enormous sums to intervene." Adams shook her head grimly. "Let them fight. Maybe they will finally learn the cost of war without humans to protect them from their own stupidity." The war was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Both the Altarians and Centaurians had mutual defense treaties with other species. Within hours, a dozen different civilizations were choosing sides and mobilizing their fleets. What had started as a border skirmish was becoming a galactic conflict that could last for centuries. But war was not the only crisis facing the galaxy. On Vega Prime, the planetary power grid had failed completely when the last human-maintained fusion reactor finally broke down. The planet was home to 8 billion aliens who now faced freezing temperatures and failing life support systems. Their own engineers had tried desperately to repair the reactor, but the technology was beyond their understanding. Engineer Pete Rodriguez had built that reactor 15 years ago, and he was the only person in the galaxy who truly understood how it worked. The vegan government was offering him 1 billion credits to return and fix their power grid. They were also promising to give humans equal status in their society and full access to vegan technology. Pete was tempted by the offer, but he knew it was just desperation talking. The vegans had spent decades treating humans like primitive technicians, who were useful but not intelligent enough to be true partners. Now that their world was dying, they suddenly wanted to friends. But Pete remembered how vegan scientists had stolen his reactor designs and published them without giving him credit. He remembered how vegan officials had refused to let human children attend their elite schools. He remembered how vegan media had portrayed humans as violent barbarians who are lucky to be tolerated by civilized species. "Let them freeze," Pete told his wife as they watched the news reports from their home on Mars. "Maybe the cold will teach them some respect." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as critical infrastructure failed without human maintenance. The hyperspace communication network that connected thousands of worlds was breaking down as quantum relays went offline one by one. Trade routes that had operated safely for centuries became hunting grounds for pirates who knew there were no human patrol ships to stop them. Medical facilities ran out of life-saving drugs that only human laboratories could produce. The most terrifying crisis was developing in the void sectors, where ancient containment fields were beginning to fail. 50 years ago, human scientists had discovered the void wraiths, energy beings from another dimension, who fed on the life force of physical matter. The aliens had been fighting these creatures for millennia without success until human researchers developed quantum containment technology that could trap the wraiths in pocket dimensions. Dr. Nathan Cross had spent his entire career studying the void wraiths and designing better containment systems. His work had saved countless worlds from these devastating creatures. But maintaining the containment fields required constant monitoring and frequent adjustments that only human scientists understood. Now those fields were weakening, and the wraiths were starting to break free. The first containment failure occurred at Research Station Alpha 7 in the Cygnus sector. The automated systems sent out a distress signal as void wraiths poured through cracks in reality itself. The alien crew tried to evacuate, but these creatures moved faster than light and fed on any form of energy, including the life force of living beings. Within minutes, the entire station was consumed, and the wraiths were spreading to nearby star systems. Alien military forces tried to fight them using conventional weapons, but bullets and energy beams only made the creatures stronger. The wraiths absorbed the energy from the attacks and used it to tear larger holes between dimensions. Captain Steve Johnson received the distress call while his ship was heading back to Earth. His crew included some of the galaxy's leading experts on void wraith containment technology. They could stop this outbreak before it became a catastrophe, but doing so would mean breaking Earth's withdrawal from galactic affairs. "Captain," said his science officer, "if we don't help them, the entire Cygnus sector could be consumed within a week. That's home to over 30 billion sentient beings." Johnson felt the weight of command crushing down on him. He had spent 20 years fighting the void wraiths, and he knew exactly how dangerous they were. But he also knew that helping now would send the wrong message. If humans kept solving alien problems, then aliens would never learn to solve problems themselves. "Continue course for Earth," he ordered reluctantly. "This is not our responsibility anymore." The void wraith outbreak spread exactly as predicted. System after system fell to the energy vampires, as alien fleets proved helpless against creatures that fed on their weapons. Billions of beings fled, their homes in massive refugee convoys that overwhelmed neighboring systems. The galactic economy collapsed completely as trade became impossible in the affected regions. Back on Earth, President Baker watched the casualty reports with a heavy heart. Every human instinct told her to send help, but she knew that would only perpetuate the cycle of dependence. The galaxy needed to learn that human assistance was not something to be taken for granted. The Galactic Council was in complete chaos, as member species blamed each other for the cascading crisis. Some aliens demanded that Earth be forced to return and fix the problems they had created. Others argued that the Council should apologize and begged for human forgiveness. A few progressive leaders suggested that maybe humans had been right about the need for equality and reform. Councillor Vikstara was no longer the arrogant leader he had been just days before. His homeworld was freezing in the dark, and his people were dying by the millions. The proud Zephyrian Empire that had existed for 12,000 years was collapsing because they could not maintain technology they did not understand. We must contact Earth immediately, he told the emergency council session. We need to offer them whatever they want in exchange for their help. But other aliens were not ready to admit defeat. Councillor Zeftor of the Gas Giant Federation claimed that the crises were temporary setbacks that could be overcome with determination and unity. His species lived in floating cities that were powered by human-designed atmospheric processors. But he insisted that alien engineers would soon master the technology. We should not bow to human blackmail, Zeftor declared. These problems can be solved without crawling back to Earth like defeated children. The argument raged for hours, while reports of new disasters continued to arrive. The Andromedan Trade Union announced that their merchant marine was essentially destroyed by pirate attacks. The Rigelian Confederation reported that their capital city was under siege by rebels who had taken advantage of the communication breakdown. The crystalline hegemony revealed that their entire population was entering hibernation because their solar collectors could not function without human maintenance. Meanwhile, Marcus Thompson, a former human trade negotiator, was watching the crisis. From his retirement home on Europa, he had spent 40 years building trade relationships between Earth and alien civilizations. He had negotiated thousands of contracts that brought prosperity to dozens of worlds. He had created jobs for millions of beings across the galaxy, but the aliens had never seen him as an equal partner. They treated him like a useful servant who should be grateful for their business. They excluded him from important meetings. They made deals behind his back. They took credit for his successes and blamed him for their failures. Now those same aliens were sending desperate messages, begging him to return and save their economies. They offered him titles and honors and vast sums of money. But Marcus just deleted the messages without reading them. He was enjoying his retirement and watching the galaxy learn what life was like without human expertise. The lesson was becoming clear to anyone with eyes to see. For 50 years, humans had been the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. They had solved problems that alien experts said were impossible. They had prevented wars that could have destroyed entire species. They had maintained technology that aliens could not understand. They had created prosperity that aliens thought was their natural right, but humans had been taken for granted and treated as junior partners who should be grateful for any scraps of respect. President Susan Baker stood at the windows of the Oval Office and watched alien ships gathering in Earth's outer solar system. They had been arriving for 2 days now, representing dozens of different species who were desperate to negotiate with humanity. The ships maintained a respectful distance from Earth's defensive perimeter, but their intentions were clear. They needed human help, and they were willing to pay any price to get it. "Madam President," said her Secretary of State, "the Zephyrian delegation is requesting an immediate audience. They say their homeworld will be uninhabitable within 48 hours if we don't restore their power grid." Baker turned away from the window with a grim expression. What are they offering? Full technology transfer, access to all Zephyrian scientific databases, recognition of Earth as an equal partner in all galactic affairs. They are even willing to give us permanent seats on their ruling council. It was exactly what Earth had been asking for during 50 years of diplomatic negotiations. The Zephyrians had always refused such terms, claiming that humans were too primitive to be trusted with advanced alien knowledge. Now their civilization was collapsing, and suddenly they were eager to share everything. "Tell them we are not interested in emergency negotiations," Baker replied. "If they want to discuss long-term changes to our relationship, they can submit a formal proposal through diplomatic channels like everyone else." The secretary looked surprised. "Madam President, their entire species could die if we don't help." "Then soon. Their species chose to treat us as inferiors for 5 decades, Baker said coldly. "They made it clear that human lives were expendable as long as alien interests were protected. Now they can live with the consequences of that choice." It was a harsh position, but Baker knew it was necessary. Earth could not afford to rescue every alien civilization that had gotten itself into trouble through arrogance and stupidity. If humans kept solving problems for aliens, then nothing would change. The galaxy would return to the old system, where humans did all the work while aliens took all the credit. Similar conversations were happening in government buildings across Earth as alien delegations made increasingly desperate offers. The vegans promised to share their agricultural technology if humans would restore their planetary power grid. The Andromedans offered exclusive trade agreements if human peacekeepers would protect their shipping lanes from pirates. The Regellians pledged to make humans full citizens of their confederation if human engineers would repair their communication networks. Every offer was too little and too late. These were the same species that had spent decades blocking human proposals and dismissing human concerns. They had voted against every initiative that would have given Earth equal status in galactic affairs. They had profited from human labor while denying humans basic respect and recognition. Colonel Tom Bradley was analyzing intelligence reports in his office at the Pentagon when an urgent message arrived from deep space. The Void Wraith containment failure in the Cygnus sector had spread to 3 more star systems and was accelerating. Alien military forces were proving completely helpless against the energy vampires, and billions of sentient beings were fleeing their homes in panic. "Sir," reported his aide, "Captain Johnson's ship is still in the area. He could deploy emergency containment fields and stop the outbreak before it reaches the heavily populated core worlds." Bradley studied the tactical displays showing the spreading zone of destruction. If the Void Wraiths reached the core worlds, the death toll could climb into the trillions. But sending Johnson to intervene would undermine Earth's withdrawal strategy and signal that humans would always come running whenever aliens got into trouble. "Contact Captain Johnson," Bradley ordered reluctantly. "Tell him to maintain his current course toward Earth. This situation is not our responsibility." The decision felt like a knife in Bradley's chest, but he knew it was correct. For too long, humans had been the galaxy's unpaid police force, rushing to solve every crisis while aliens sat safely in their council chambers, making speeches about peace and cooperation. Those same aliens had never lifted a finger to help humanity when Earth faced its own problems. Dr. Nathan Cross was working in his laboratory on Luna when he received a coded message from his former research partner, an alien scientist named Tethmaya. The message contained detailed scans of the failing Void Wraith containment fields, along with a desperate plea for assistance. "Nathan," the message said, "I know Earth has withdrawn from galactic affairs, but this crisis threatens every living being in the galaxy. The containment failures are cascading faster than we predicted. Our calculations show that the Wraiths will reach the core worlds within a week. Only human containment technology can stop them." Cross studied the data with growing alarm. The situation was worse than he had feared. The Void Wraiths were feeding on the energy released by the containment failures, growing stronger with each system they consumed. Soon they would be powerful enough to tear permanent holes between dimensions and invade the physical universe on a massive scale. His scientific instincts screamed at him to intervene. This was exactly the kind of catastrophe he had spent his career trying to prevent. But Cross also remembered how alien scientists had treated him throughout his career. They had stolen his research and published it under their own names. They had excluded him from important conferences and committees. They had dismissed his warnings about containment, system weaknesses, until those warnings proved tragically accurate. Cross composed a brief reply to Tethmaya. The galaxy chose to reject human expertise. Now the galaxy can solve its own problems. He encrypted the message and sent it, then returned to his research on improved containment technologies that would benefit only Earth and its allies. Ambassador. Lynn Foster was Earth's most experienced diplomat and president. Baker had asked her to coordinate responses to the flood of alien requests for assistance. Foster's office was buried under formal proposals from dozens of species offering everything from exclusive trade deals to territorial concessions in exchange for human aid. The most interesting proposal came from a coalition of younger alien civilizations led by Counselor Tethmaya of the Progressive Alliance. Unlike the desperate emergency offers from collapsing empires, this proposal outlined a comprehensive reform of galactic governance that would give all species equal representation and voting rights. They are offering to dissolve the current council structure and create a new federation based on human principles of democracy and equality, Foster told President Baker during their daily briefing. It would mean the end of the hierarchical system that has dominated galactic politics for millennia. Baker studied the proposal carefully. It addressed most of Earth's long-standing grievances about alien arrogance and discrimination. But it also came at a time when the aliens making the offer were facing extinction without human help. Are they making this offer because they believe in equality? Baker asked. Or because they are desperate enough to promise anything? Probably both, Foster admitted. But does it matter if the end result is genuine reform? It was the central question facing Earth's leadership. Should they accept alien promises of change made under duress? Or should they wait to see if aliens would honor those promises when the immediate crisis passed? History suggested that grateful aliens quickly became ungrateful aliens once their problems were solved. The debate was raging in government, buildings and media outlets across Earth as humanity struggled to decide how to respond to the galaxy's collapse. Some argued that Earth had a moral obligation to help prevent billions of deaths regardless of alien attitudes. Others insisted that helping now would only perpetuate the cycle of dependence and ensure that nothing really changed. Fleet. Admiral Rose Campbell was coordinating Earth's defensive preparations as alien refugee ships began appearing at humanity's borders. Most were turned away with offers of humanitarian supplies, but no permission to enter human space. A few ships carrying genuine political refugees who had supported human equality were granted temporary asylum. Admiral, reported her intelligence. Chief, we are detecting massive military buildups near several major alien homeworlds. It appears some species are preparing for wars of conquest while their neighbors are weakened by the various crises. Campbell nodded grimly. It was exactly what Earth's strategic analysts had predicted. The collapse of galactic civilization was creating opportunities for aggressive species to expand their territories at the expense of weaker neighbors. Without human peacekeepers to maintain order, the galaxy was reverting to its natural state of constant warfare. The situation was becoming increasingly desperate as each day brought new disasters. The Altarian-Centauri War had spread to involve 20 different species and showed no sign of ending. The Void Wraith outbreak was consuming entire star systems and generating massive refugee flows that were overwhelming neighboring regions. Critical infrastructure was failing across hundreds of worlds as human-designed systems broke down without proper maintenance. Yet Earth remained unmoved by alien pleas for assistance. President Baker had made her position clear during a televised address to both the human and galactic communities. The signing ceremony took place on Earth's moon at the newly constructed Luna Diplomatic Center. Representatives from 137 species had gathered to witness the birth of the reformed Galactic Federation, a democratic alliance based on principles of equality and mutual respect that humanity had championed for 50 years. Ambassador Kate Morrison, now serving as Secretary General-elect of the new Federation, watched as alien leaders who had once dismissed humans as primitive newcomers lined up to sign the charter that would transform galactic civilization. Many of these same beings had voted against every human proposal during her decades of service to the old Galactic Council. Now they were eager to embrace the very reforms they had once rejected. The crisis had lasted 6 months, and the final death toll was staggering. Over 200 billion sentient beings had died from wars, infrastructure failures, void wraith attacks, and the countless other disasters that erupted when human expertise was withdrawn from galactic affairs. Entire star systems had been abandoned. Ancient civilizations had collapsed. The economic losses were beyond calculation. But from that tragedy had emerged a new understanding of what true cooperation meant. The aliens who survived had learned that civilization could not be taken for granted. It required constant effort from all participants and could not be maintained by forcing one species to do all the difficult work while others took all the credit. The old Galactic Council believed that age and technology determined status, Kate said during her acceptance speech. They created a hierarchy where ancient species ruled over younger ones, where advanced civilizations controlled primitive ones, where the powerful dominated the weak. She paused and looked out at the assembled delegates, many of whom were wearing the simple gray robes that had become the symbol of the democratic movement that swept the galaxy during the crisis. But we have learned that true civilization is not about having the oldest empire or the most advanced weapons. It is about how we treat each other, how we work together to solve problems, and how we share both the burdens and benefits of progress. Applause was thunderous and genuine. These aliens had paid a terrible price to learn this lesson, but they had learned it thoroughly. The species that attended this ceremony were the ones that had embraced reform during the darkest days of the crisis. The ones that had refused to change had either collapsed completely or retreated to isolated regions where they posed no threat to anyone but themselves. Captain Steve Johnson stood in the observation deck of his new command ship, the USS Unity. The vessel's crew included humans, reformed Zephyrians, progressive vegans, and members of dozens of other species who had proven their commitment to equality during the crisis. It was exactly the kind of mixed crew that the old Galactic Council had claimed was impossible due to species incompatibility. "Captain," reported his Zephyrian science officer, "we are receiving a distress call from the Outer Rim. A group of void wraiths has escaped from a damaged containment field." Johnson smiled. 6 months ago, he would have had to handle such crises alone with only human support. Now he commanded a joint task force equipped with the best technology from dozens of species and staffed by beings who had learned to work together. "As equals, set course for the distress beacon," he ordered, "and contact Dr. Cross on Luna. We will want his expertise on containment procedures." The Unity and its escort ships jumped to hyperspace, racing to contain a threat that would have been handled only by humans under the old system. But this time, the response team included alien scientists who had spent months learning human containment techniques and human engineers who had mastered alien energy manipulation technology. It was this kind of genuine cooperation that made the new Federation different from its predecessor. Instead of humans doing all the difficult work while aliens took all the credit, every species contributed according to its abilities and received recognition for its contributions. Dr. Grace Miller was working in her new laboratory on Kepler Station, a joint research facility that had replaced the segregated institutions of the old galactic order. Her team included the brightest minds from across the galaxy, all working together on projects that would benefit every member species of the Federation. Dr. Miller called her research partner a reformed Andromedan named Zex-Hi. The new hyperspace communication system is ready for testing. Grace smiled as she examined the device. It combined human quantum engineering with Andromedan energy crystals and Rigelian computational matrices. No single species could have built it alone, but together they had created something far superior to anything that existed under the old system. The hyperspace communicator was just one example of what could be accomplished when species shared their knowledge freely instead of hoarding it for competitive advantage. In the 6 months since the Federation's founding, joint research projects had produced breakthrough advances in medicine, energy production, space travel, and dozens of other fields. But the most important changes were not technological, but social. The new Federation had established universal principles of sentient rights that applied equally to all species, regardless of age, origin, or technological level. It had created democratic institutions where every member had an equal voice in galactic affairs. Most importantly, it had fostered a culture of cooperation where helping others was seen as both a duty and an honor. Fleet Admiral Rose Campbell watched from the bridge of her flagship as the first joint military exercise in galactic history began. Human ships flew alongside reformed alien vessels in perfect formation, their crews working together with a precision that would have been impossible under the old system of mistrust and competition. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, a young vegan who had trained at Earth's Naval Academy, "all ships are reporting ready for the exercise." Campbell nodded with satisfaction. The new Federation's defense force was smaller than the combined militaries of the old galactic order, but it was far more effective. Instead of dozens of separate fleets that refused to cooperate, there was now a single unified command structure based on merit rather than species. Politics. The exercise simulated a response to a void wraith outbreak using the new containment technologies developed by joint human-alien research teams. Within hours, the mock crisis was resolved with minimal casualties and maximum efficiency. It was exactly the kind of coordinated response that had been impossible when humans were excluded from military planning and aliens refused to learn human containment techniques. Minister Paul Wright, Earth's representative to the Federation Council, was reviewing the latest economic reports in his office on Luna Station. The numbers were remarkable. Despite the massive destruction caused by the 6-month crisis, galactic economic output was already returning to pre-crisis levels. Thanks to the elimination of trade barriers and the free sharing of technology between member species. "Minister," said his aide, "the Zephyrian delegation is requesting permission to establish a manufacturing facility in the Sol system. They want to produce fusion reactors using both human and Zephyrian technology." Wright approved the request with enthusiasm. Under the old system, such cooperation would have been impossible because species jealously guarded their technological secrets. Now that knowledge was shared freely, every world could benefit from the best innovations regardless of their origin. The transformation was visible everywhere. Human children attended schools alongside alien students, learning about dozens of different cultures and ways of thinking. Alien scientists worked in human laboratories, contributing their unique perspectives to research projects. Human engineers helped build cities on alien worlds using architectural techniques that combined the best ideas from across the galaxy. It was the kind of truly integrated galactic civilization that visionaries had dreamed of for centuries, but which had been impossible under the hierarchical system that privileged ancient species over younger ones. Kate Morrison stood once again in a great hall filled with alien representatives, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of elevated thrones that made humans feel small, the new Federation Council chamber featured a circular arrangement where every delegate sat at the same level. Instead of condescending speeches about human inexperience, the discussions focused on practical solutions to shared challenges. The Refugee Resettlement Program is ahead of schedule, reported Consular Teth Maya, who had become one of Earth's strongest allies during the crisis. Over 50 million beings displaced by the wars have been relocated to safe worlds with full citizenship rights in the Federation. It was exactly the kind of humanitarian program that the old Galactic Council had routinely rejected as too expensive or too complicated. The new Federation had made it a top priority and accomplished it in months rather than decades. What about the Void Wraith Containment Project? Asked another delegate. Dr. Cross answered from his seat in the Science Advisory section. We have successfully contained the last of the outbreak zones and established permanent monitoring stations to prevent future incidents. The new joint containment technology is 90% more effective than the old human-only systems.